In Denver, Colorado, a 63-year-old grandmother named Bernice Hollenshed spent a year living in her 30-foot trailer parked on a quiet residential corner, hosting her granddaughter for weekend visits and neighborhood barbecues on the grass beside it. Then, one snowy January morning, she unhooked her truck to drive to a doctor's appointment. When she came back the next day, her home, with everything she owned inside it, was simply gone, stolen off the corner without a trace. $300. That is what it costs, in the cheapest version of this story, to build 4 walls around yourself that at least cannot be driven away while you are asleep inside them. Across the country right now, an enclosed cargo trailer, the same boxy aluminum trailer you have probably seen hauling lawn equipment or moving furniture, is quietly becoming one of the most common homes for mothers who have run out of every other option. It is not glamorous. It has no windows, no insulation, and no plumbing when you find it. But for the right person, willing to do the work, it can become something a tent, a car, or a sidewalk never can. A door with a lock that only she controls. This is the story of a woman who did exactly that, and by the end of this video, you will understand exactly what her life looks like inside $300 of aluminum and plywood, night after night, with her kids asleep 3 feet away. To understand why a cargo trailer, of all things, has become a real option for mothers in this situation, you have to understand how fast the ground can disappear from under a family that looks, from the outside, completely fine. The most recent federal count found that just over 770,000 people were experiencing homelessness in the United States on a single night, the highest number ever recorded since the government began tracking it in 2007, and an 18% jump in a single year. Women with children are one of the fastest growing groups inside that number, and their path into it rarely looks like a single dramatic collapse. It looks like a job that cut hours, a divorce that split one income into 2 rents, a medical bill that ate the emergency fund, and then, within a season, a woman standing in a parking lot with her kids and everything she owns in the back of a car. The woman in this story, and she represents thousands of mothers living through some version of the exact same math right now, did not set out to raise her children inside a cargo trailer. Nobody does. But when the math stopped working, and the shelters near her were full, or wouldn't take a woman with 2 children and no partner, she looked at a beat-up, windowless aluminum box advertised for $300 because the previous owner had water damage he didn't want to deal with, and she saw something most people would drive right past. 4 solid walls, a locking door, and a roof that, unlike a tent, would not collapse the first time it rained sideways. What she built inside that box over the following 6 weeks, and what her life actually looks like inside it every single night since, is the part almost nobody who drives past a parked cargo trailer ever stops to imagine. 8 months before she ever set foot inside a cargo trailer, she had a 2-bedroom apartment, a job at a regional daycare center, and a co-parenting arrangement with her children's father that, while not perfect, at least kept a second income coming into the house. Then the daycare center lost its funding contract and cut her hours by more than half. In the same month, her ex fell behind on child support after losing his own job. She tried to make the math work for a while, the way most people do, by paying half the rent and hoping for the best, cutting groceries, letting the car insurance lapse for 1 month. It held together for about 90 days. Then it didn't. The eviction notice came on a Tuesday. She remembers that detail specifically, because Tuesday had always been grocery pickup day, and instead of buying food that afternoon, she was standing in a courthouse hallway asking a clerk what happens next. What happens next, for a mother with 2 children and no partner in the house, is usually a waiting list. She called every shelter within driving distance. Most were full. The 2 that had space did not take boys over the age of 12, and her oldest had just turned 13. One offered her a bed for herself, separately from her children, which she refused on the spot. She spent the first 11 nights in her car, in a 24-hour grocery store parking lot, reclining the seats, keeping the kids' backpacks packed by the door in case anyone asked her to move. It was a coworker from her old daycare job, someone who had heard what happened, who mentioned the listing almost as an afterthought. A neighbor of hers was selling an old enclosed cargo trailer, the kind landscaping companies use to haul mowers, for $300, because a leak around the roof vent had ruined some drywall he had installed inside years earlier for an unrelated hobby project. He just wanted it gone from his property. She drove out to look at it, expecting very little. What she found was a 6 by 12-foot aluminum box, rusted around the wheel wells, smelling faintly of mildew, with exactly one factory feature going for it: a roof vent that still opened and closed properly, and a set of metal tie-down strips bolted along the interior walls, the kind installers use to secure cargo during transport. Everyone else who had looked at that trailer saw a gutted mess not worth the tow. She saw a frame, a roof, and a door that locked, for less money than 1 week in the cheapest motel in town. She paid the $300 with money her sister wired her and had it towed to a spot on a friend's rural property 20 minutes outside town, the kind of quiet arrangement that exists all over this country between people who have almost nothing and are still willing to share the little land they do have. Getting the trailer there was the easy part. Turning an empty aluminum shell with no windows, no insulation, and no power into somewhere her children could actually sleep safely, that was the part that took 6 weeks, most of it done after her kids were asleep, working by the light of a headlamp because the trailer had no electricity of its own to run a single bulb. The first problem, and the most dangerous one, had nothing to do with comfort. It was ventilation. A cargo trailer is, by design, sealed as tightly as a shipping container, built to keep weather and thieves out during transport, which means it also traps whatever air is already inside it. Anyone who has ever considered heating a sealed metal box with a propane heater or a camp stove needs to understand this before anything else. Carbon monoxide does not smell like anything, and in a space this small, a leak that would be a minor annoyance in a house can be fatal in under an hour. She spent part of her first week's tiny budget, before she bought a single piece of insulation, on a battery-powered carbon monoxide detector, and she kept the roof vent cracked open every single night, regardless of the outside temperature, because that vent, the one factory feature the trailer already had built in, was the only thing standing between her family and a mistake with no warning signs. Insulation came next, and it came from wherever it could be found for free or nearly free. Rigid foam board, the kind left over from other people's renovation projects, cut to fit between the metal wall studs. A roll of reflective bubble insulation, the silver kind sold cheap at hardware stores, stapled across the ceiling to bounce heat back down in winter and reflect it out in summer, because a metal box sitting in direct sun in July can turn into an oven fast enough to be genuinely dangerous, not just uncomfortable. She parked the trailer under the only stand of trees on her friend's property, specifically for the shade, and covered the roof with a reflective tarp on the hottest days, the same principle boat owners use to keep a cabin livable at anchor. The floor was bare plywood, laid directly over the trailer's metal frame, and it stayed cold to the touch, even with the door shut, because metal pulls heat out of everything touching it, including 2 kids' bare feet in the morning. A layer of leftover carpet remnants, free from a flooring store that was replacing its showroom samples, solved most of that problem for the cost of asking a question at a counter. Power was the hardest piece, and also the one she is proudest of. A single deep-cycle battery, the kind sold for boats, charged during the day by one solar panel zip tied to the least shaded corner of the roof, ran a string of small LED lights, and, critically, kept 2 phones charged every night. Those phones were not a luxury. They were how her oldest checked in with the school's homework portal, how she herself filled out job applications and searched for openings, and how, if anything ever went wrong in the night, someone could call for help. Water came from 7-gallon jugs, refilled every few days at a relative's house, heated on a small propane camp stove used strictly outside the trailer, never once inside it, a rule she enforced without exception, given what she now understood about carbon monoxide in sealed spaces. Inside, the 6 by 12 feet were organized the way anyone organizes a space when there is truly no room for anything extra. The metal tie-down strips already bolted to the walls, originally meant to secure cargo during a delivery run, became the exact hardware she needed to hang 2 sets of shelving brackets, a row of coat hooks, and a curtain rod that split the trailer into a sleeping area for her children and a slightly smaller space for herself. Her sons shared a mattress on a plywood platform built up on cinder blocks, both for insulation from the cold floor and to create storage underneath for clothing bins. She slept on a folded futon pad against the opposite wall. An upside-down plastic tote became a nightstand. A string of family photos, hung with binder clips from a length of twine, was the one purely decorative thing in the entire space, and she has said it mattered more to her than anything functional she built. Meals were simple by necessity. Canned soup, rice, peanut butter, the kind of food that does not need refrigeration she could not reliably provide. Her younger son's asthma medication was the one thing she treated as sacred, kept in a small locked box near her own sleeping area, checked every single night before anyone went to sleep, because losing access to a shelter meant losing access to a pharmacy on the same predictable schedule too. The hardest hour of every day was not night. It was 6 in the morning, when both boys needed to be dressed, fed, and dropped at school looking like nothing at home had changed, because she had made the decision early on that her children's classmates would never know where they slept. That performance, getting 2 kids showered at a relative's house before sunrise, packing lunches from a box of shelf-stable food, driving them to school in a car that still ran but barely, and then driving back out to a trailer with no address to call her own, repeated itself identically every single school day for 6 months. 5 months in, the exact fear that opens this video very nearly became her reality too. A property management company had taken over the empty lot 2 properties down from where the trailer sat, and a crew showed up early one Saturday morning to clear what they assumed, from the road, was an abandoned piece of equipment left behind by a landscaping company. She heard the diesel engine of a flatbed tow truck idling outside before she was even fully awake, and by the time she got the door open, a worker was already hooking a chain to the trailer's frame. For a woman who had built every single system inside that box herself, insulation, power, water, a locked medication case for her son, watching a stranger prepare to drive it away in under 2 minutes was its own particular kind of terror, worse in some ways than the eviction had been, because this time her children were standing right there, watching it happen. She did not have paperwork proving ownership beyond a handwritten bill of sale from the neighbor who'd sold it to her for $300, folded up in the same locked box as her son's inhaler. She held it up through the truck's open window and made the driver call his supervisor before he pulled another inch of chain. It took 40 minutes, standing in her pajamas in front of her children, explaining to a dispatcher on speakerphone that this was not abandoned equipment, that this was where her family had been sleeping every night for 5 months, before the crew finally unhooked the chain and left. Her older son, 13 years old and already understanding more about the family's situation than she wished he had to, asked her afterward if they would have had to live in the car again if the truck had taken it. She did not have a good answer for him that morning, and she has said that moment, more than the eviction, more than the first night in the parking lot, is the one that still wakes her up sometimes. Word of what happened traveled through the small network of people in similar situations faster than she expected, the kind of informal information exchange that happens between people who have all learned the same lesson the hard way. Within a week, 3 other people living in vehicles or trailers on borrowed land nearby had asked her to help them put together the same kind of paperwork folder, a habit that has since spread quietly through that same informal network the way most survival knowledge does in these situations, one person teaching the next, with no organization or funding behind any of it. A year after buying that trailer for $300, her circumstances have shifted, though not as dramatically as a tidy ending might suggest. She picked up a second part-time job doing billing for a medical office, work she found through the same relative who lets her refill water jugs, and between both incomes, she has started saving toward a deposit on an actual apartment, slowly, a little each month, in a fund she keeps separate from everything else, so she is never tempted to touch it during a bad week. Her older son is 14 now and knows, in a way she never wanted him to have to know, exactly how to check a carbon monoxide detector's battery and why the roof vent stays cracked no matter how cold it gets outside. The trailer itself has been upgraded twice since that first 6-week build, once with a small second-hand window cut into the side wall for actual daylight and cross-ventilation, and once with a slightly larger solar setup a coworker helped her source, doubling what her single panel could produce. The metal tie-down strips are still there, still holding the same shelving and coat hooks she rigged up in her first week, because they still work exactly as well as they did the day she found them. The property management crew that tried to tow her home never came back, though she still keeps that folder of paperwork within arm's reach at all times, updated every few months, because the Supreme Court's 2024 ruling in Grants Pass made it legal for cities and property owners across the country to treat a vehicle like hers with even less patience than before. And she has no illusions about how replaceable her explanation would have felt to a driver simply following orders on a different morning, with a different mother standing in her pajamas, holding a folded piece of paper up to a truck window. She does not describe what she built as a solution. She describes it, when she talks about it at all, as the thing that kept her children off a parking lot floor for long enough to find her footing again. One deep cycle battery, one roll of reflective insulation, and one bill of sale at a time. What separates her story from Bernice Hollenshed's, the grandmother whose stolen trailer opened this video, is mostly luck and 40 minutes of a stranger's patience on a Saturday morning. Both women did the exact same thing when the system built to catch them did not. They looked at a piece of aluminum most people drive past without a second glance, and they turned it into the one thing, a car, a tent, or a shelter bed with a stranger in the next cot can never fully provide, a door only they control. One of them still has that door, the other is still looking for her next one. $300 is not a policy. It is not a program with a budget line, or a case manager, or a 5-year plan. It is a number that happens to sit exactly at the edge of what a family with almost nothing left can still scrape together in a single week, which is probably the real reason it keeps showing up in stories like this one, again and again, all over this country, in trailers and containers and buses and pallets, built by people the official systems were supposed to reach first and somehow didn't. Roughly 770,000 people are living some version of this story tonight, and a rising share of them are mothers making the same calculation this one did. Not whether 4 walls made of scavenged aluminum and a stranger's leftover insulation is a good option, but whether it is the only one left standing between her children and a parking lot floor. If this story changed how you think about the trailers and containers you drive past without a second look, hit subscribe. I cover stories like this every week, the ones that are actually happening a few miles from wherever you're watching this from, and the video on screen right now picks up a story that started almost exactly the same way. I'll see you in that one.